You know, for too long something's been missing. To make the setup complete, we have to make the setup truly complete. Yeah. So that's right, officially back, and officially feeling good. It's time for us to talk about an album, a new one that's set to come out. Phenomena, by the band Within the Ruins. This is one that was requested by a couple of individuals over on the coverkillernation Facebook page. If you are not a fan over at the coverkillernation Facebook page, you should definitely go over there and take care of that ASAP. That way you can get your requests in. And who knows, you may actually help fuel a CKN review in the future. Now, these guys are a Massachusetts-based metalcore band that does have some elements of deathcore to it. And the first thing that I noticed whenever I started listening to this record and getting deep into it is a real focus, a real flair, a real desire to push this element of the guitar style that they really have going on. Now, traditionally speaking, we do have a lot of the deathcore slash, more so a metalcore influence that is really involved here. This is something that is very core to the core. Definitely one that has all of the staples involved as far as musicality is concerned. However, there's something in the background that just basically sounds like a lot of pattern touching, a lot of key touching, and really trying to almost grant the illusion of, I don't know if it's some sort of metallic guitar slide or something like that, or if they're just trying to, maybe it's a pedal that they're using in order to make it sound a little bit broken or a little bit jilted a little bit, but it's something that actually I imagine they're trying to push as either an idea of theirs that is one of the focal points, one of the things that makes them unique as artists. And to a degree, it is actually very true. It does offer a very unique perspective to the genre and everything like that, and it's definitely not the quintessential piece of Within the Ruins. For me, however, on this record, and I'm going to get to it right away, it was a large irritant. It was something that actually got in the way of making this a truly magical or memorable experience. This is 11 tracks, 47 minutes in length, and each track incorporates this in some way, shape, or form. This is something that they incorporate into their sound. And I feel as though I didn't represent it with a very, articulate enough description. However, this is one that you sort of have to listen to in order to really understand where I'm coming from. Every other aspect of this album is relatively fine. To be perfectly 100%, I feel as though this is just sort of middling metalcore. This is metalcore that has a lot of good trace elements and good basic elements to it, and this is coming from a band that formed in 2003 as the first wave of metalcore bands had already, reached some popularity and were starting to ascend even further into the sky. And this is something that I guess was really meant to be the second tier, the second layer, the new wave. And I feel that this idea just really gets in the way of a lot of these tracks. It kind of gives them something that's supposed to represent a lot of creativity. It's supposed to represent a lot of a virtuosic idea, or a virtuosic ideal. But it doesn't come off that way. It really comes off as, okay, here's a great example. For those of you who are old enough to remember the Nintendo 64 Legend of Zelda game, Ocarina of Time, you know the little fairy, Navi, would always say, hey, listen, hey, listen, hey, listen, shut the fuck up, you fairy piece of shit. It's kind of like that. It's a constant little thing that pops up, sometimes whenever you expect it, other times whenever you don't. And at first, it's kind of a novel idea. At first, you kind of think maybe they're just doing this to really add a dynamic and add a character trait to a track. For me, this is the first full Within the Ruins experience, so for those who are more experienced with this group, for those who are more well-versed with this group, you may already be yelling at me saying, they do this in every song and it's amazing. I don't have that same take. It brings upon that little irritating aspect to me. Perhaps this is just me. Perhaps it's just something that plagues me in that department, and if that's the case, that's fine, because I'm still going to deliver this album a score that's based around impartiality, that's going to actually remove that from the account. and only affect it minorly. Because a minor irritant such as that should not be something that actually brings down and drives down the score of an album completely. It's instead something that should be sort of shifted aside and kind of be seen as something that other people may enjoy about this band, but I simply did not. Aside from that, the songwriting on this album, it isn't bad. It's nothing really, jarring or flooring. It's nothing that's really taking the world by storm. It, as I said, really feels very middle of the road. Kind of like something that just exists and exists well enough to really be on the radar, but at the same time, it really isn't doing much for me. I can kind of understand why this band perhaps is not talked about with higher praise, higher regard, or is lauded higher up in the pantheon of second tier or second wave metalcore / deathcore hybrids. I can kind of get that. There's an element of gent in the bass, if you really want to call it that. And really, gent as a subgenre is a ridiculous concept considering it's based off of a sound, and it's something that's present here. Does that make them a gent band all of a sudden? I surely don't think so. Instead, it's something that they have incorporated into it. So, there you go. Aside from that, the vocals are actually a pretty strong positive. They're very, very well executed. I enjoyed that aspect of this, and aside from that, the musicality definitely feels like it has an above-average flair to it. But once again, the songwriting is just not flooring me. It's not setting my world on fire. I do enjoy the fact that they have now incorporated a third Ataxia song on this album. There are two others there seems to be an Ataxia song on each full-length record by Within the Ruins, and I think that this running theme idea is a neat one. It's one that's been incorporated before. The one band that immediately comes to mind is one that I just reviewed recently, and that's Overkill. They did the exact same thing for a while there, and the Overkill tracks were always highlights because they were conceptually a little bit different, but at the same time really showcased the breadth of style. And in a way, they were each trying to tell their own story. One of them being entitled Under the Influence, just like the name of the album in which it's on. The Nightmare Continues, I believe, was one of them. And then, of course, there's just the self-titled Overkill. So this is an idea that definitely helps propel a little bit of creativity, and also subtly encourages you that if you like the album that you just heard, to get the other two. That way you hear maybe the first two parts of Ataxia and find out what the whole entire movement sounds like whenever you play them back to back. I like little shit like that in music, principally because it really encourages individuals to try everything from a band. I myself am tempted to do the same thing. However, as a whole for this group and as a whole for this album, I wasn't blown away. It wasn't something that I think is a complete stinker. It's not a complete pile of shit. This is something that a lot of people are going to listen to, and they're really going to enjoy. They're going to check this out, and it's going to find a nice, handy place in their collection. It's not going to collect dust. It's instead going to sit there very proudly. However, I feel as though this is one that, for me at least, just didn't have enough flair, it didn't have enough panache, and the thing that was being used to really illustrate the flair and panache instead acted as more of an irritant to me than it did a positive booster. So as a whole, I'd probably give this album probably a 71 out of 100. It does have some songwriting that's fairly decent, but as I said, more middling than anything else. And aside from that, it's just not all of that catchy. It's not something that blows my ass away. It's instead something that just really exists and is a nice, reminder that metalcore second tier is out there, and that metalcore still has some relevance. And whenever you combine it with deathcore and some elements of gent, if you really want to go that far, and give it a little bit of swagger, it's really going to apply to some people. This is definitely something that's really going to apply to fans of this style, especially ones that like some of the other second-tier quality bands. But what did you guys think? What did you guys think of Phenomena by Within the Ruins? Is this their best album yet, or is this one that feels like a band with a fork in the road kind of in front of them? What do you guys think? Are there better Within the Ruins albums out there? What's your favorite track off of this one? Answer below in the comments. Let's talk about this a little bit, and I'll catch you guys next time. And I'll always have these on from now on, unless I drop them out a window. There's a window over there, so let's hope that doesn't happen by accident.